transferable skills.
Well, if you're a media nerd like me, you're going to really enjoy this episode where I had the chance to talk with Mike Stephen, who's had a long-standing show on WGN Radio called Outside the Loop. The link will be in the show notes, and I'll let you listen. I don't want to give away the spoiler of where his career had taken him along that journey, but he talks a lot about his transferable skills that have been instrumental in the success of his career. This episode is sponsored by Handily. For all your home improvement DIY needs, visit gethandily.com. Excited to welcome today Mike Stephen. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It is great to be here. What you do, I think, is really neat.
Tell me a little bit about your background and when you started in your career. What were you doing?
Initially, my professional career was radio. I went to Loyola University, Chicago, and I got involved in college radio there at WLUW, which is still around. It's a great 100-watt radio station, and I just fell in love with telling stories. I was playing a lot of music at that time, but going to Loyola really kind of opened my eyes to communities in Chicago that I never knew. I grew up in Elmwood Park, so just outside of Chicago, so I never knew some of these places existed. And here you are, 18 years old, and they say, go enjoy Chicago. And so I did, and I found out what I call the nooks and crannies of the community. And I thought, man, someone should tell these stories. Like, someone should amplify this stuff. So I really got curious about that when I was in college. And then so out of college, before I graduated, I got an internship, a summer morning show internship at WGN Radio. And I'd interned at some other radio stations, but it was really there that I found people who were into, newsy stuff, but also arts. And I made a bunch of friends. I ended up meeting my wife there. So it was a great experience. So I started as a producer in radio for about 6 or 7 years. And it doesn't pay a lot, kids. It does not pay a lot. So I had to find another job. I became an audio engineer for a small production company in the burbs. Then I bounced around. But all the while I was thinking about, teaching. And I'd always thought about teaching. My parents taught for a long time. And I love to tell the stories. I love to educate people. And so that's where I am today. I'm a teacher. I also host a radio program on WGN. My friend, who was also a producer, Andy Herman, who helped me start Outside the Loop, what my show is called. I don't know if we talked about that, but it's called Outside the Loop. And it's a podcast. For the last 18 years, it's been a podcast.
What subjects did your parents teach?
My mom was an English teacher for many years. My dad was a Catholic priest. Clearly not anymore. And he taught theology. He was also very active in the anti-war movement. This is around the height of Vietnam. And he felt that the church at the time wasn't moving fast enough in terms of their anti-war stance. And so I think that was part of it.
Like your father, you really want to be part of a movement. You want to do something that is bigger than you to reach a bigger audience for greater good.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's interesting. I always knew that he was pretty influential to me. But now I have, similar sort of political conversations and conversations about community. He was always very active volunteering. And so I think that what I do now, I look at sort of giving back to the community. I mean, I get paid. I make a living off this stuff. But I really feel that what I do is, I don't know, it's giving back. It's service leadership. I look at it, and that stems from the Catholic tradition as well.
You're building a rich history and legacy that will hopefully last for many decades after we're all gone.
Teaching history, and those who are historians talk about oral history, and I'm a fan of oral history. And I think this is somewhat in that vein because what I do on my show, it's conversation driven. It's kind of like what you're doing here, and those conversations are now archived forever. And, some people that I've interviewed, years ago, they're not around anymore.
Yeah.
But in a way, they are, right? Their stories are, and what they were about continues to persist. And that's wonderful. And so you're right. This age that we're living in, I think it's wonderful for that. But also I would, I always try to look for the overlap with teaching. And I say that teachers are kind of like the original influencers.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because you don't know when you're teaching, you don't know the destiny of some of these kids. Like, you could be teaching the next president of the United States. It comes down to that. You could be doing that. Or someone who's going to go on to start an organization that helps thousands of people. And so that's how I kind of approach it. And sometimes, let's be honest, it's hard because they're teenagers. And when you're with them every single day, sometimes that grates on you. It grates on them, but I think that's ultimately what and in anything I try to do, look for the humanity. I love teaching because in part I get to tell the story of people, right? I get to interact with people. I love doing radio because I get to tell the stories of people and interact with people, amazing people.
Your parents were both educators. What made you ultimately want to be a teacher? Like, was it just following their path, their footsteps?
I think it's a combination. I think it definitely, for me, I did feel it in the family. I think that I've always been really into trying to educate, and I don't mean in the formal sense, but like I like to tell a story,
Mhm.
right? I like to bring light to something that maybe doesn't get that spotlight. And I get to do that in teaching. I really get to tell stories of history and have the students sort of dive into it and discover things that they have never heard of. Because let's face it, we've heard of the Washington, Jefferson, all the normal names, Lincoln, but even like civil rights, Martin Luther King. We've all heard of Martin Luther King, but do you know the story of the Black Panther Party? Right? Do you know Stokely Carmichael? Do you know these wonderful people who have done incredible things? And so to see that light bulb go off for kids, it's like, wow, that's amazing. And I've always been really drawn to that because when I find out something that I didn't know and I feel like, man, I probably should have known this, I think to myself, well, why is that? And I get curious and it really excites me. So I want to share that with other people and especially the future generation because you are going to be the next idea generators. And so you need to have that education. It's the best gift you're ever going to get. That's always excited me, just to learn and to always be like curious about my surroundings, and brought that to my show, I hope. And now again, teaching was always in the back of my mind. And it was actually one of my dear friends, and his name is Andrew Brown. We now teach together. I teach at Oak Park and River Forest High School. And he became a teacher later in life too. He was working on the Obama campaign. Then he became a teacher, and he inspired me. I saw what he was doing and the great work that he was doing, and so it was almost like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. I should absolutely do this job. And I went for it. I went back to grad school. I got my master's degree, and I never looked back.
Your personal life and curiosity has influenced your broadcast journalism and your show, the subject matter, your genuine curiosity, and then wanting to tell that story on your show and to your audience. How have you seen your broadcast journalism career and skills translate into how effective of a teacher you are in an educational standpoint?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially because this is the Transferable Skills podcast. So
That's right.
I'll say this. I don't know what it's like to start out in radio today, but when I started out in commercial radio, which was about 2001, so 23 years ago, I would do anything. I would take any shift. I would work any crazy hour of the
Oh
day.
yeah.
The morning show, it was Spike Odell's morning show. Great, amazing man and wonderful education. But the show started at 5 a.m. and I'm 21.
That's hard.
That was hard. That was hard. But you did it. Like I said, you know what? I have to do this because
If you don't do it, somebody else is going to take that slot.
somebody else is going to do it. Somebody else is going to do it. You're absolutely right. And I leapt at that opportunity. And so if they needed fill-in producers at like overnights, sure, I'll do it. I literally have slept on the news director's couch overnight when the news director is not even in because I needed somewhere to sleep because I knew that I was working a late shift and I had to get up the next day and work an early producing shift.
Yep.
So I just sleep at the station and my commute, is 30 feet. That work ethic, when you become a teacher, it is, I'll speak for myself. It's difficult because I want to do this job the best I can possibly do it in anything. And for me, it takes a lot of prep. It takes a lot of preparation. And so me preparing for the radio, if I was doing behind the scenes as a producer or even my show, I do a lot of reading, a lot of thinking and preparation work. That work ethic and that preparation, like always have something ready to go,
Yep.
translates into a teacher because when you're in the classroom and if something's going south, all eyes are on you. You've got to be prepared that if you need to call an audible, you call an audible. So I'll give you an example. At our school, we have different schedules. So like different days have different schedules. And it's for me, I've got a lot in my head. And sometimes I'm off by a couple minutes and I think today is Tuesday, but it's actually Wednesday. And so I loved a thing I love. And this is a radio thing. We used to, hit the top of the clock. So it's like 3:00 and you'd hit the tone, like perfect. I timed it, tone perfectly.
Very satisfying.
That still satisfies me. And so I try to go up to the bell, and if I can just like drop the last word and the bell rings, it's great. So I thought I did that. This was last week, and I still had 2 more minutes left, and I'm like, oh, damn it. So what you have to do in that situation is you got to have something in your head that you can fill that time with. Same thing with radio. If you have that gap, you have to fill it with something. Can't have what we call dead air,
Right.
which is nothing.
No.
That is a skill, that sort of audible calling, improvisation, to take it to the tone, if you will. So preparation, I think, is the first thing.
Back in 7th grade, I was in the class with the other animated fellow students. What we did was we would synchronize our watches to the bell.
Sure.
The teacher had a system where if you interrupt his class or disruptive, you write your name on the chalkboard on the far corner. You interrupt again, he'll give you a check. 3 checks and you're out. We would time our watches to the bell. As soon as we were like 5 seconds from the bell, we lose our mind. We'd jump on the desk. We'd make a lot of noise. He played by the rules. Bell's over, class over.
Yeah.
You're not disrupting anymore,
Right.
right? As we lost our minds and were disruptive, he would see who he can quickly give a check to. And if you got a check, you were in trouble. It was a fun game until at some point in the middle of the year, the school would do some sort of recalibration, and then you'd be off by a minute or something, and you'd find
Right.
yourself making a lot of noise and no bell ending the class. And then he would just casually walk up and check every single name down the list. Teachers that are engaging and understand their audience, and that combination of being prepared, being playful, being able to
Yeah.
improvise and not have dead air, but to also, I think there's a time and place for meeting some of the kids at their level. Well, and to,
Yeah.
listen, this is close to 30 years later. I'm speaking fondly about this teacher.
To me, it's the ultimate humanity.
Yeah.
It really is. Just at a fundamental level, you can be a teacher and you can go master differentiation and scaffolding. These are all very important skills that teachers need to do. But if you can't connect with people on a human level,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that is just that is the entry point. And it's, do you connect with humans? That can't be taught. And I really think that the best teachers are gifted. It is a gift to be able to understand people on, like you say, on their level, but also to have a genuine interest. For me, the classroom is a sacred place. It's sacred. It is special. That's where the relationships happen. That's where the learning happens. And also, I would say, is when I do radio, and as corny as this sounds, I mean, it is a very special, sacred thing I'm privileged to do. And to be on WGN is wonderful because the reach of that signal is massive. And then to be able to do this digitally is special too. So these are very sacred, special things to me. And that's, I guess, I don't know if that's sanctimonious or whatever, but it drives me, right? It's a carve out that's special, that, hey, you do this thing, come with me.
You're passionate about it, but you're also protective of those 2 sacred spaces. And that's because you're in a position with a lot of authority and power. You can reach a mass audience, even if it's 10 students at a time. That has the ability to influence the rest of their life in a positive or, worse off negative way. It's interesting. There are very few other environments where kids have a unique individualized experience that may differ from the kid who is actually sitting in just the seat next to them.
Yeah.
And certainly something that is not privileged or available to their parents.
It's the best job. It's the best job, but it's also the most difficult job because I have 25 variables in front of me. They don't all learn the same way. Some people might come into the class and like, oh, I don't like history. I don't like US history, which is what I teach. And I get that, sure. And some people, I might have a segment on my show, like I really don't like whatever they're talking about. So it's up to me to try to inspire some curiosity.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I mean, whether it's your radio show or being a teacher, what kind of preparation or forethought do you put into planning for thinking about how this is going to be received by a very diverse audience? Again, classroom or radio. How do you address information that you want to convey effectively, knowing that there's going to be a lot of different ways that people might appreciate that or digest it?
I'll go with the teaching first. So you think about your kids. Now I have over across 5 periods, I have over 100 something, 120 kids that I see every day. You get to know them after a while. And when you put together a lesson, and every time I do a lesson, I'm revising it from the last time, just knowing the makeup of my students, this might work better for a variety of reasons. It could be just skill level. It could be general interest in whatever. So you really have to kind of think about who's in the room. And so teachers have a process that's known as differentiation, where you're delivering a lesson, but this group might need this and this group over here might need this, and that's very hard to do well. And with the radio, I'll just look at the station itself, WGN. Massive history in the Midwest.
Huge.
Massive reach, so it goes all throughout Illinois, into Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa. I have to think about an issue. Recently, I was doing something about the Austin community in Chicago, and it's like 98% African American, would be considered urban. I think to myself, how is this going to land with someone who is in rural Illinois? Because the person in rural Illinois should know about this.
Sure.
Right? And how does this land with the suburban person? And so it's the topic is great, I think, and it's up to me to get the conversation. So again, it's a human thing. You could live way out there, but hey, man, this is like a human story. I care about this, even though it's not in my community, and vice versa. If I'm doing something, I was speaking to someone about farming, and if you're in Chicago, if you're living like in Lakeview or something, why do you care about farming? So it's taking into account that. And again, it's not that the topic is only for one group, because this is stuff we should all know. Again, it's that shared sort of humanity. The trick is, how do you get people interested? And really, to do that, that's where the prep comes in. That's where you have to prepare. You have to think about it. I have a perspective. You have your own perspective. So it's hard because I see things through my eyes, through my own experience. And that's not the same as, say, someone who does live in Austin, who does live in rural Illinois. So you have to step out of yourself. And similarly, when you're a teacher, I think, can you put yourself in this 16-year-old shoes? And hey, I've got football practice tonight. Like, what's going to make me dial in right now, so I know that later on I can do that thing and focus on this thing?
That's very interesting, because there is a direct correlation, almost not that discernible, between those two examples that you gave. If you're talking about the issue that is directly relatable to them, now to everybody else, it might be just impact. So somebody in Lakeview might feel the economic impact for some issue that's happening in the rural communities of Illinois or anywhere else in the Great Plains. There's this infestation, and now suddenly your corn on the cob for your 4th of July barbecue costs 4 times as much.
Right.
Same thing can go when you're talking to students in a classroom who might have football practice that night. Well, what happens if you are assigning a big thing tonight, not realizing that they have a 2-hour football practice tonight? Earlier, back to what you were saying about the human interest, about understanding them better, having a relationship that is developing over that semester or year, thinking about how you are getting to know these students and recognizing, hey, I bet you 4 of you are probably going to be very busy tonight. Let's talk about how this is going to go over the next few days.
You hit on it. It's the humanity, just understanding where we're coming from. And this was told to me by Rick Cogan, who is a longtime newspaper guy, was a kind of a mentor to me when I was coming up. He still writes for the Tribune. He said that, 99.9% of all of us, no matter if you're in the most urban area or the most rural area, have the same like wants and needs.
Yeah.
We want to be loved. We want to be treated with respect. We want to be able to have a roof over our heads. We want to have a meal that is going to satisfy us. I mean, these are the things that connect us. And that is right there. If we always just keep that in mind, there's so much more that connects us than divides us.
I have a common conversation that comes up, say, like a couple times a year in my household. I have children that are growing, and what I'm constantly talking to them about is the difference between entitlement and privilege.
Mhm.
You are entitled to shelter, food, clothing, to education. You're entitled to love.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other things as well, but those are at least five things that you are entitled to.
Right.
Then there are privileges that you earn. So endless screen time, or access to things like the car, hanging out with friends. All these things are earned privileges, and you can earn them in many different ways. But let's not mix the two.
Yeah. I mean, it's true.
What you said earlier is true, that the entitlements, the things that we all are entitled to, and many of the things that are privileges or desires of ours, it really doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, where you were born and raised. Many of these things are universal.
Yeah. And, I guess this is, as we get philosophical here, I look at today where we're at just in the landscape of technology and media. And I just try to come back to the sense that we're all in this thing, man. I mean, this ride goes pretty fast.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to showcase that common humanity while educating, entertaining. And I look at that in the classroom and on my program.
What would you say to somebody who wants to get into broadcast journalism? What are the skills that you find most instrumental in your longevity and success for your radio show?
It's funny you ask this because every spring I go to a conference where I present to high schoolers on podcasting. I get these students that come in from these, they're high schoolers. And my main message is just do it, right? Like do the thing. Now, if you're interested in podcasting, it's hard because if you're a celebrity of any kind, I feel like the default now is like, oh, I'll just start a podcast and you automatically have a following built in.
Yeah.
That is not how it works. And so I tell people, if you're really into it, you might think that you and your friends are hysterical and you're awesome. And maybe you are to you
Right.
guys. But what ends up happening is if you put a few microphones in a room and you sit around with your buddies and crack jokes, no one's going to care except those people at that table. So think beyond yourself. Like, what are you interested in? What is like really something that gets you going? For me, it was the curiosity of the world around me and just people. And so that was my angle. So like, what is your angle that you want to get across? That is key, because what we see is these celebrities and comedians now jump in and they have other celebrities and they have conversations and people tune in just because of the celebrity factor. That doesn't happen normally. So I had to build up an audience. This is 18 years and it's still growing. You got to love it, right? So do something that you really love to do. Don't even worry about the audio quality just yet or to make sure everything is perfect. Just get your feet wet and do the thing, because all that other stuff you can learn. If you want to work in radio, it's a little bit harder these days because stations have been gobbled up by other stations. It's not impossible. And I would say internships, apply for the internships, be ready to get up at 4 a.m. and get your butt to the station by 4:45. And if, you could be getting coffee, but also like doing research and helping the host and finding information. Then you practice and you get good at the conversation piece. And it's a lot of work. And today I think we want to just get in there and, hey, I'm a star. Honestly, I am. When I have people on my show, I'm more interested in them. I like being on air. I like, doing this conversation. I love it, but I'm so curious about them. I really want them to shine because in my mind, that is why you're tuning in. I mean, here I am, I'll guide you along. Maybe I'm your friend and I hope I come across that way, but really for me, it's their stories that drive it.
I want to go back to your advice earlier. The first piece you said is just go do it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about the quality. You don't have to worry about if you don't have to worry about who or how. Just go do it. Go try. At least you've tried and you've done it. And you know a little bit more now than you did 5 seconds ago before you even considered trying it. I want to talk about your second piece of advice, which is quality, because there is a very, very early TED Talk by Simon Sinek that is one of the most popular ones. It was before the TED organization really got their stuff together, and it's pretty
Hmm.
low quality. And yet it's
Yeah.
still one of the most popular one. It's because of the content. So content is king. It is really about what you're saying, not how good the dumb things you're saying sound. As well as, what is your job as a host? You did this and you're getting into media and you've been doing this now how long? 17 years, 18 years?
The show I've been doing for 18 years, I started in radio in 1998.
You're just a little bit ahead of where I am. And,
Well, look, it's all relative, I suppose. And it was different too when I started. I mean, none of
no,
this.
none of this existed.
Here we are,
You couldn't do this from your house back when you started?
no, no. I mean, like, it sounds like we're in the same place. And that was not, I mean, that was hard to do in 1998 and early 2000s. You had to have like a satellite hookup.
It was hard to do in 2010.
Yeah. Yeah. And that gives you an idea of the technology. So you're right. Like kids, especially when they ask, how do you start? You have a supercomputer in your pocket, and it's also a portable production house in your pocket. Start there and just go do it. I mean, show one in September of 2006 sounds a lot different. This week is show number 933. So, and I've never missed a week in 18 years.
That's incredible. You're like Cal Ripken Jr. of radio.
that's the other thing. I was very, again, it goes back to like this work ethic thing. I care about it so much, especially starting out. I always thought I have to start a momentum. And I thought if I didn't do it one week, that the momentum would somehow go away. Even if I go on vacation or something like that, I plan ahead. Like you're getting content every week.
That begs the question, does radio today need to be live?
There's something about, for me,
And I'm not talking about the weather and traffic.
sure, right, that should probably be live. I'm going to go out on a limb and just say that. So does it need to be live? I don't know. I mean, I love the immediacy. There's something, if you're in your car and you're in traffic, there's something, I mean, it stinks that you're in traffic, but there's something about like, yeah, we're going to get to weather in 5 minutes and traffic in 5 minutes. But right now, here's so-and-so. It's like, oh yeah, this is happening right now. So I love that immediacy. Now, on the other end, I also love like putting on a podcast and going to work out. I think that there will always be a need for immediacy, for that immediate human connection in real time.
Real-time access to the content.
Yes, real time
Question
access.
is it somebody literally live sitting in a booth telling it to you, or has it been pre-produced?
Well, and I think there's something really awesome about like if there's an interview happening and you know that this has not been edited, like this is happening now.
Oh yeah.
Like that's it right there.
There's an energy there you cannot replicate.
It's real. It is real. And that's why radio works. For me, really good radio is intimate. It hooks you in. Like it's a conversation. Like, I can't leave this.
Yeah.
Right? They call it there's an old thing, they call it the driveway test. Would you drive into your own driveway and sit in your car and listen to the conversation until it's over? The driveway test,
Yeah. I think with podcasts, I can, put my AirPods in and I'm just switching to my phone and walking in and still listening. But I can't do that with my radio, or at least not as easily. If you're in the middle of a segment and you're in your driveway, I've found myself saying that. I've had my wife walk out. What are you doing out here? It's almost over. I'm just listening to this.
Don't talk. Don't interrupt me. I have to listen to this.
The energy of live radio is exactly what you were describing is with sports too. I mean,
Yeah.
unless it's an important game,
Right.
however you define that, whether it's postseason or just a matchup, a rivalry, for the most part, it's rare, if almost ever, that I will watch a recorded game that has finished, even if it's only finished a few hours ago. Cubs won. I'll watch the highlights if I missed the game.
Sure. That's how we used to do it, right?
But I don't know why. What is it? Why can't I watch the full game? Like, why is it any different from an enjoyability standpoint? I'm sure there's plenty of crazy people out there, and maybe I'm one of them. Maybe about football I would do this, I guess. But I'm not going to watch a 3-hour baseball game after I know that it's over. Even if there's no discernible difference between the experience of watching it live or a few hours later. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I think there's something about knowing that this is happening right now, and there's no way for me to know what's going to happen.
It's that energy, I think, right? That you're talking about, that I was talking about before. And think of it like this. You're in a bar, a crowded bar, and you're watching the Bears.
Yeah.
I love the Bears, right? So
Bears.
Something happens and the whole place erupts. Like, that's the thing. I mean, it's not about the alcohol. It's just about being together in the
Community.
same place. Yes,
Yeah.
community. You nailed it. So that to me that's the special thing about sports, but also it translates to radio.
It does too. You ever pull up at a red light and this person next to you is listening to the same thing?
Yes, and they're going crazy with you,
Yeah.
or they're reacting the same way.
That's the greatest moment of your week.
Yes, absolutely.
That is so interesting. I don't think I've ever really considered the question of, is live any different or is it still relevant, until this moment, talking about the implications of the energy, or that I know this is happening now and there's no way to know what's about to happen in the future.
When I do interviews in person and I'll sit down, I'm never rude to anyone, but I do try to keep it let's keep it short. And I've had to tell people oh, that's great. You know what? Hold on, save it for the air. I'm going to roll on this, because I don't, I've done my homework, and now the things that you're going to say, I want that honest reaction. You can't have the same wow or freak out or excitement twice. It just does not work.
It's not the same.
The listening skills are so key. You have to, it's a conversation, and a good conversationalist listens and then reacts to what's being said. And it sounds fundamental, but you'd be surprised how many people just bulldoze and want to get their own talking points and their own things out there. I'm very prepared when I do an interview, or even when I'm teaching. Obviously, we talked about that, but I always want to leave room for where this thing is going. So if the students are needing something more, they're telling me that, okay, Mr. Steven, we need to go in this direction. And if I'm doing an interview and I'm hearing something that is maybe new to me, I have to then at the time call the audible and say, all right, I got to make a left turn here and pursue this. And, we'll see where things land. But that happens all the time. You have to listen to people. I think that's, again, a life lesson. I feel like we've had a few life lessons during our conversation here, Noah. So we should,
Definitely.
Again, these are free of charge, everybody. You just come here for some good life skills and some good inspiration and boosting.
The skills are not limited to just career applications. These are life skills.
Life skills.
Not in jest. I believe that the listening skills, as an example, makes me a better friend, spouse, parent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a work in progress. Don't get me wrong.
We all are, man. We all are. Trust me.
But to be able to benefit from this experience is very meta for me. I am gaining all this very interesting and useful information, talking to people and learning about their skills, and then figuring out how those apply into my own life and how I can be inspired by every single person that I've talked to.
We're so lucky. I mean, it is a privilege that I get to think about the people I talk to every week, people who are doing really awesome research, people who are in the community creating organizations that are helping people, artists, musicians. That's amazing. I get to do that. And then I get to go to a school. I get to see kids who are by and large awesome. And I get to interact with them and hopefully, if I'm doing my job, educate them and inspire them. I mean, what a life, right? Like this is it. I mean, if maybe another life lesson is sometimes you have to take a step back and look at it and say, man, I got it okay. Like this is pretty cool what I get to do. So I don't take it for granted. I'm 44. I don't know, midlife stuff happening, and I'm trying to be more reflective. And you get caught up in the rigmarole of the week and the day and dropping kids off, and I'm doing my show prep and I'm teaching, but man, at the end of the day or the week, put your feet up and say, nice job. We're all trying to do this the best we can, but we can hang our hat on some of the stuff that we're doing here, and that's okay. You can do that.
I think the last skill here that is maybe most important is grace. Give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Give yourself some patience and some flexibility. Don't be too harsh on yourself, and recognize what you have accomplished, because at the end of each week, I think everybody has what to be proud of. And so, Mike, I just want to say thank you for being here. This has been incredibly interesting to me.
Thank you for having me. I'm ready to go like another hour and a half. Let's do this, man. I got the juice in me. I'm caffeinated. Got my big Bears water mug here. I'm ready to go.
Thank you to Michael Sofer for recommending Mike Stephen as today's guest. And congratulations to Michael Sofer on publishing his first book as an author called Our Nazi, An American Suburb's Encounter with Evil. Available now for pre-order. The link will be in the description. I also want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this episode of Transferable Skills. Remember, if you found value in today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with your friends and network. Your support helps us reach more people who could benefit from these stories. Transferable Skills is produced by Cackle Media and music by Cost Monkey. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Handly. Your support makes this podcast possible. Head over to gethandly.com to video chat with pros on demand for expert advice on your home DIY projects. And don't forget to use coupon code MADSKILLS to get your first 15-minute session free. For more resources and inspiration on leveraging your skills for a successful career transition, visit our website at www.cacklemedia.com. Follow us on social platforms at Cackle Media for updates and join our community of listeners who are all about embracing change and growth. If you have any questions, feedback, or want to share your own career pivot story, email us at skills@cacklemedia.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and remember, the skills you've gained can take you anywhere. Until next time, keep exploring those transferable skills.